Welcome back, baseball fans, to another elimination video. This one is eliminating, well, it's the best one, folks. Let's face it. It's eliminating the White Sox of 2025, the world champs. What we're looking at is last year's start, or last year's season, just to get a benchmark here. This is the 30-21 season of a team that lost the league championship to Oakland 4-2. It went a long way. And there are some pieces of this roster that might be slightly more talented than the 2025 White Sox, but there's also probably more holes in this roster. Let's start with pitching. So Gossage, 0.74 ERA, a 110 whip, 36 innings, 52 strikeouts, 16 walks. He was incredible. Yet with all that, it's just 10 saves. Because it's just not enough situations, but still a lot, but not enough. Terry Forster got 5 wins, which is interesting. It could mean that he comes in tie games, or it could mean that a lead gets blown and they come back and get a win. But he still pitched well. They added this Dave Lemons guy. He was a lefty, a second lefty in the bullpen. All those guys were great. Wilbur Wood was Wilbur Wood, eating up innings, getting 12 complete games. Bart Johnson showed promise, but with a losing record. The problems were in the back end of the rotation. Tom Bradley and Stan Bonson. They were 6 and 8, part of the undoing in the league championship series. And one of the relief pitchers who threw 24 innings, Mike Garman, had a 7.88 ERA. More on him later. Offensively, they're going to miss Carlos May. 313. With the stolen bases, the RBI, 60 hits on the club. That'll lead the team. Steve Bry was a nice contributor in a part-time role. Orta underachieved a little bit, 284. Dick Allen had the RBI, walks, but it's a 259 average. Melton was okay, but Muser, Aparicio, Bradford, a big fall for Henderson. We expect him to hit close to 290, 300. He hit 229. And the catchers were really pretty bad a year ago, Stinson and Downing. Okay, but with all of that is being said there, they still went to the league championship series. Now let's look at the world champs. Unreal. So they raised their batting average about 10 points. Actually, it's even, I guess it's better than that, right? It was 258. So yeah, exactly 10 points. But the team ERA dropped by almost half a run. Gossage's saves went up, but look at the won-loss record in the ERA and even the walk-strikeout ratio. He's needed more, don't get me wrong, because they're extending their season, playing more games, winning more baseball, but he's also getting picked on a little bit. Okay, that's fine. The other guys in the bullpen are still doing well. Terry Forster, about the same kind of year, but he wasn't 5-0. He's 0-2. And a lot of these struggles of 1-4 Gossage and 0-2 Forster happened before the All-Star break. And that's when they leaned on the third guy in the bullpen, this guy named Mike Garman. You remember him, 24 innings a year ago with a 7.66 ERA. Well, he was untouchable with an ERA of 0 in 24 innings. And that'll help out the bullpen quite a lot. Now, the starters. Wilbur Wood started slow, finished hot, as did Jim Cott. They finished 22-10 between them. The ERAs are a little on the high side, as they are known to put men on base. But that's, again, okay if you're going to get more offense this year. The big story, I think, in the whole pitching line is Bart Johnson, given the role at the top of either the number 1 or the number 2 in the Divisional, League Championship, and World Series. He had complete games in a couple of those levels. Pitched 8 strong in his World Series start. 6-1 record, best winning percentage on the team. His year-to-date ERA is 2.72. That matched the performance he had in 74 against stiffer competition in our league. 92 innings, where he threw 140, I believe, in 74. All in all, the pitching is really what carried this team. Offense, Orta wasn't playing every day because Becker played against lefties, but he hit 352. Lamar Johnson was the rookie contributor. We couldn't find a spot on a diamond for him, but we found a nice spot in the lineup at the 6th hole between Henderson and Bradford, and he produced there. Henderson rebounded with a nice year, hitting .301 with the stolen bases. Not a gaudy home run total. Dent, batting 9th, hit .292. That's unexpected. Stinson, 400 on base, batting 2nd most of the year. 22 walks, 118 at bats. You had Bill Melton was the really only guy who had somewhat of a slump, hitting .236. You don't mind Beckert and Coluccio in platoon roles. They're mostly needed for defense. Buddy Bradford, his batting average would be bad because we left him in against a lot of lefties, and he's not really good against lefties. But he has the homers and the RBIs. I mean, you got Melton with 28, Bradford 30, you got Henderson with 28, Lamar Johnson 26, and of course, it's all tied together by Dick Allen. He didn't make the All-Star team. He was hitting around .244 at the break. Then he got to .250 in the tournament. He got to the divisional round up to .265 and almost .280 here as he finishes with 14 homers and 50 RBIs. Most of them happened in the series against the Oakland A's, the Ohio Players, the Orioles, and the Dodgers. That's where most of his homers happened, late in the year. So, I mean, it's an elimination video because it's the happiest one. It's the World Championship team. So let's take a look now at those White Sox. We're going to first look at the 1973 players and see who is going to need a new card or who might be moving on. And of course, we got enough guys here to grab four for the following year. It shouldn't be that painful. Statistics may drop a little bit, but the players you want will probably come back. And they're going to start. These are the first 12 players. So Brian Downing is a -1 arm catcher here with a 75 card. I believe he may have had an injury to his arm in a collision that hindered his throwing process and the ability to throw down base runners. He'd eventually be a +2 arm catcher, then they moved him to the outfield in California. But he's still an on-base machine with more power to come. Here's Lamar Johnson, a man who can hit. And that's kind of about it, but it's a good thing to have. It's a .320 hitting. Where do you play him? Well, DH, first base. They actually had him in left field and hit him a lot of the time when they could. He was exposed more before the All-Star break, luckily for them. After that, they gave him 3 at-bats in the game and got him out of there before he could hurt him anymore. So he survived his defensive woes. Great Orta card. I mean, look at the hit on 310. Single dot and a 14 chance on 9 plus the walk. That's like 340, 350 over on that one side. For a 316 hitter, that's amazing. Great card for Orta. And again, you got 2 Bucky Dent shortstop. If it didn't say Chicago White Sox there, you could just put them on the Yankees in the latter part of the decade. And, you know, this is going to be interesting to see how his future is now. They've just won the World Series. Why would you let this guy get away? He'll hit you 250. What more do you want, you know? You want a 1 or 2 shortstop if you can get it. And he's always a 2 shortstop. Through at least 1981 he is. So I don't know why you'd let him slip away to the Yankees in our recreation. Coluccio was brought in because of the 2-2 in the corners. And because he can play a little bit on the left side. Not over there, you don't want him swinging the bat. And that's what's going to drive the batting average way down to 202. Ken Henderson's going to run this card back one more year. What a great card. You know, the -2, the bee stealer, good base runner, extra base hits galore, draws some walks, 5-tool guy. If only he could do this year in and year out. He seldom did, unfortunately, but he was very good when he was on. Now the pitching. And here's Bart Johnson. 2.73 ERA. He pitched to a 2.72 ERA, 92 2/3 innings, 122 innings there. 10-4, he went 6-1. So he was finally given the chance. And again, no home runs in addition to no walks over there. So the control got a lot better than where it was. We'll take the single 1 of 3 on 8. Even the 11 chance was missed a couple times in those playoff starts. Had the opponent hit the 1 to 11, might have been a different story. Cott's going to run another 20-win season back for the White Sox with a 74 card. We lamented his start back in March, April. He was getting knocked around, but then suddenly it all clicked. Really, as a lefty, you're always looking over here first. You assume lefties can get lefties out, but he really is good over here. And that's what we really like about this card, and he improved as the season went on. Big reason, their defense got settled. The offense became more consistent behind him. Bonson had a forgettable World Series appearance, but that's all right. They didn't need him to be a starter, even though that's what he was with Oakland. They made him a relief starter. The reason they made him a relief starter is that Jerry Bell was a starter 7, and they thought Bell could give him an extra inning, Bonson may not. Also, Bonson gave up a lot of homers over there. Good enough to be in your bullpen. This Mike Garman card, talk about the top and bottom of the hill. 7.66 ERA in 24 innings last year. Perfection in 24 innings this year. Homer 1 fly ball, single 1 to 6, probably never touched. He just wasn't touched all year. And it's kind of a fluke, but the guy's got talent. That's a good card. 2.63 ERA. In 48 innings, probably he would have performed to a level of, say, a 3.50 ERA. So if you add the clunker year, he probably doesn't quite live up to that earned run average. But still, once you have, and a relief 3, once you have Gossage and Forster, a third guy in the bullpen is very valuable. Here is Forster. The more we looked at his card, the more we were concerned about how just kind of ordinary he was against right-handers. We immediately selected him because of how he treats lefties. But he was protected. He didn't have to get into a lot of battles versus righties during the year. He was the guy who came in when Jerry Bell started or when Bart Johnson started. He did get 2 losses when he blew holds. And here's Gossage. Finally, maybe you can't really say overworked, but he was worked even more than a year ago. Got 16 saves. But finally, the league said we've just got to get lefties in there versus righties. The disparity is it's too much, and you just have to attempt that. Dodgers tried to get lefties in there in comeback attempts, but Gossage had the final say. He battled out of jams in World Series games 1 and 4, and that's why we're doing the world champion White Sox video right now. So let's take a look now at how they build out those 1973 players for a defense of their title. All right, the first player is, of course, alphabetically Dick Allen, your star, the rock of the team. Where the team goes, he goes, and vice versa. He leads this team. And in 72, he was your MVP, leading the league in all these categories: WAR and homers and RBIs, walks and OPS and slugging, and the whole thing gets the MVP. Well, you're not going to see that in 73 because he only played 72 games with an injury. But when you looked at the percentages, it's a comparable year. He's doing pretty much the same thing. He just doesn't achieve the lofty titles, but he could have gotten the 37, 113, the 99 walks. He could have gotten that stuff had he been healthy. Still made the MVP list. So 2 years, those have been concluded, and now he's in the next 4 years, only one of which is with the White Sox. Here's the great news. The best years with the White Sox. And he leads the league in slugging and OPS in 74, and he's back to 32 home runs. It won't even be fruitful when he goes to Philadelphia and Oakland anyway. He's just be kind of ordinary then. And of course, he did eventually get into the Hall of Fame. which was great news as well. So Dick Allen, they'll run that 74 year back. So that's a given. To defend the title, they're going to need Dick Allen to make an attempt there. And that's the first player to be kept. Next on the list is Beckert, Glenn Beckert. What a weird but fun story for Glenn Beckert. The interesting timeline we just finished with him. We had the 71 year was the incredible year where he's in the All-Star game. And he's in the starting lineup of the All-Star game, and he's in there next to Johnny Bench and Willie Mays and Willie Stargell, Willie McCovey, Joe Torre hitting 366, the MVP, Hank Aaron, and there's Glenn Beckert because of 1971. He goes out of his mind hitting 342. In 72, it drops to 270. And the Cubs, because his defense wasn't a 2 anymore, decided they were going to move on at the second base position, even though he was a Cub in 73. Cubs said, we want to go a different direction now. So he went on waivers. And he also didn't hit any home runs. Not a very productive hitter, a 290 slugging. But the White Sox called and said, we need a defense for George Orta. So they signed him. And he gets a World Series ring in the town he played. So with that, in 74, he has a card for the Padres, but his defense is gone by then. That card does exist to give him waivers. There really isn't a practical need to bring Beckert back to the White Sox again if he's not going to give you the defense. And sometimes, you know, this is what happens to World Championship teams. Everybody's not going to come back, so... He catches waivers for the Padres. That's where he will go on the waiver list. Buddy Bradford's weird platoon era is, and we'll have to look at the splits statistically. Let's take a look at that as well. Buddy Bradford, rather unusual. Here we have him. Okay. He had fun cards in 72. But in 73 and 74, he goes 238 and then 333, okay? I like the 238 card better than the 333 card because it's all versus righties. Let's look at the splits for him. We have some time. Your 73 splits for Buddy. He's got an 801 OPS versus righties, but just 619 versus lefties. Because it's 40-some% against lefties, it brings the overall average down to 238. But we like the 801 OPS and the 465 slugging with that card. All right, that's fine. Let's look at 74 now, the card we can move into. And you're like, well, it's obvious. He's a 333 hitter. All right, that might be obvious. But against righties, he's unplayable. He had just a 28 plate appearances and went 3 for 24 with nothing. So there's nothing on the card there. He only had 84 at bats versus lefties. And here's the thing: when you've got a 403 batting average, they're not going to put that much of an emphasis to make sure your guy hits 403. I've noticed this a lot on part-time players. When you give it the eyeball test, he looks like a 333 hitter versus left-handed pitching, which is still great. Don't get me wrong. But the value is he's all versus lefties now, which is not as important as being versus righties. In our league, we have 3 left-handed pitchers of the 8 on our teams, more than Strat had and MLB had, but still not 50%. So that's what you're betting on with Bradford. Do you keep him against lefties only? I mean, let's think about it. We got Lamar Johnson is a righty, you know. Bob Coluccio is a righty. There's 2 guys that would be ahead of him, at least somewhere on the diamond or a designated hitter, along with Dick Allen, don't forget, Bill Melton. So we'll have to figure that one out. Do you hold on to Bradford for lefties only, or do you trade him? He's valuable, though. Don't get me wrong there. Next up is Bill Melton. 73. We'll call this, I think, the last good Bill Melton card. Yeah. Then after that, he's 2 more years with the White Sox, full seasons, 240 hitter now. So it's a 30-point drop in average. And in slugging, I'm mostly concerned with defense. If he's a 4 third baseman, I probably aren't interested in him. But the plate appearances suggest that the White Sox are either going to have to keep him or he's going to get a full-time job somewhere in the league. So for now, he's a keeper because he's in the timeline for the White Sox. But they're thinking if you really want to defend the title, and the odds are stacked against the White Sox. We've never had a repeat world champion, and there's more that can go wrong than can go right in this attempt. We're also going to indicate he might be a trade piece because he's only really got 2 years left. Hard to imagine that he actually might even go on waivers because of the deep pool of keepers. That could be a really talented waiver list. And there's a lot of teams. You know, I think we mentioned the California Angels. I don't know. Yeah, the Angels are dumping their whole roster, right? So the Angels could use Melton to play third base, hitting 240 with a, reasonable slugging. They're not going to contend for a World Series, but they could certainly use a player like that, and they might get him for free if they realize that they don't have to give up anything to get him. All right, 2 more hitters. Talking Tony Muser. He'll be productive still as a defensive asset at first base and a nice contact hitter. Hits for decent batting average, at least one more time. Moves to Baltimore. So he's got a 291 coming up. But the power would be gone, what little power he had. They actually gave him full-time power with that 73 card, which is advantageous. If you look at simply the WARs for the rest of his career, it's not good at all. But with 74, you got the batting average and you got defense at first. That will play in our league somewhere for a team with a weak defensive first baseman. Maybe it's the White Sox with Lamar Johnson again. Maybe those 2 guys platoon strictly at first base. This 75, they combine these stats for Baltimore and the White Sox. You don't get a 317 card. But the 75 2-team card exists along with the 74 card. So he'll be a player in the league. I'm assuming he's going to be a 2 at first base. If that's the case, I'm more inclined to keep Muser as a left-handed bat where they have a shortage of those and a defensive player than Melton. So even though Melton has more name recognition as a White Sox player, I'm of the opinion Muser might help the team more. Next up is Bob Stinson. Good news for Bob Stinson is that he can move into another productive card coming up in his future to extend his career. Might be for somebody else, but what a neat player. In 73, it's just, I guess WAR's a reflection of how often do you play, but 261, 374, 414, 788. The walks and the homers and the switch hitting ability, power on both sides, that's nice, really, for a catcher, in this era at least. I mean, it's not Johnny Bench, of course, but that's a productive player right there. 74, it's a no-go. 75 with Kansas City, he's got decent numbers, as he does in 76. 77, he's back up to a 754 on the expansion Seattle team. So there you go. That's a team that would make a play for him. And in 78, his WAR is 3.2. That's the highest WAR of his career with Seattle. So there you go. You want to stash him somewhere or move the piece if you can't fit him. The Mariners in 77 would be a nice fit. He's keeper quality, though, probably not for this team. Not being kept by this team, but he might be a keeper in our league. All right, next, it's Wilbur Wood. Now, the innings are starting to erode the performance a little bit. That's all right. Got him a World Series ring. He was 12-7. Well, he goes back to the All-Star game in 74 after missing it in 73. This is where the ability to pitch on 2 days rest ends, I think. I think it's just 71, 2, and 3. But I don't know if it's still there in 74 because the starts aren't 49 or 40. It's down to 42 starts now. Still a ton of starts. And the whip improves a little bit. Walks fewer batters in less innings. He's coming back for that 74 card. Lifetime White Sox. Obvious here. And what do you expect? They won the World Series, folks. They're a talented team, and they're going to have a lot of guys who are going to have futures. 6 of them so far. And lastly, it's Jerry Bell, and congratulations, Jerry. You just got yourself a World Series ring. When all you were doing in this timeline was probably playing for the last place Seattle Pilots or Milwaukee Brewers, I'm guessing, right? No, he wasn't with the Pilots, but he was with Milwaukee beginning in 71 to 74. He's a lifetime 17, 11, 328, and 200. The lifetime numbers are really good here on the bottom shelf. 17, 11, 328 ERA, 283 innings, a 132 whip. The 72 card and the 73 card are most of that. And sadly, the 74 card is only 14 innings. That card doesn't exist. So he has to retire. He doesn't have a card in 74. So he is the only retirement. That was an advantageous pickup by his agent. Hey, Jerry, why don't you go to the White Sox? I need a number 4 starter, and you're not going to have to pitch that much, and you might go to the World Series. And he's like, the White Sox? I'm like, yeah, the White Sox. So there you go, folks. 6, 1, and 1. Obviously, it's Allen and Wood. 1A and 1B. Okay. Beyond that, 2 of the next 4 guys. And we have all off-season to consider this. Bradford crushes lefties. Muser can platoon with Lamar Johnson, give you defense and an average against righties at first base. Melton's on the decline. Stinson, you've got Brian Downing, who is more of your future catcher, might want to play full-time. You don't really necessarily need Stinson unless you have a shortage of left-handed bats. But we like to move players who don't have a team association onto a team that does have that. So that's why Stinson wouldn't stick around. Muser, Bradford, and Melton. Those 3 guys are competing for 2 chairs, and they gave them musical chairs here. That's what it looks like. But it's still a great opportunity for the White Sox to improve again in the offseason. They got a lot of talent here. As we get to the final calculation before the offseason begins. And it's up to 22 talented players that want to be kept by their teams. They're going to have to go on the waiver list. And then the 7 worst waivered players will have to move into the retirement list. That's simply a distinction in that you have to have 64 waivered players. The retirement list will be 64, but whether they continue to have a Strat-O-Matic card or not doesn't necessarily matter. It really doesn't matter. Typically, you might get 10 or 11 guys on a retirement list every year. And in the draft, a handful of those guys, half dozen maybe, less than that, actually get drafted or at least signed an undrafted free agency. But that's it. Break up the White Sox again, the world champs. That was their elimination video. Next up, we're going to do a reconciliation of the 1973 card set and tuck that one away. I hope you're enjoying this kind of analysis. We'll see you next time.